for participating in this. I appreciate it. What I thought I'd do is two things. One is just give you the details on where I have been on this trip, and number two, tell you the highlights of the trip, particularly Afghanistan and Pakistan. I'm with five members of there are 5 members of Congress. This is a congressional delegation with Jim Marshall, a senior member of the Armed Services Committee. He's from Georgia. Jane Harmon of California, Homeland Security. Charlie Dent, Republican from Pennsylvania. Cynthia Lummis, L-O-M-M-I-S, a new member from Wyoming, and me. And we flew initially and spent our first day of work in Beirut and had afternoon meetings with the Prime Minister, Mr. Assad, and also with the Defense Minister. And we went from there to Pakistan and we spent a night an afternoon, a night, and a full day in Pakistan, and then we spent 2 days from there we spent 2 days in Afghanistan, in Kabul 1 day, and then down south in Kandahar and outside of Kandahar with some special forces Marines at one of their base camps and also at a village where they are implementing a village stabilization program. And then from Afghanistan, we then flew on to Tbilisi, Georgia, where we've spent today having meetings with officials here from the embassy and also with the president of Tbilisi, Georgia. And we've completed our trip pretty much now, and I'm calling you from Tbilisi, Georgia, and we'll be returning home tomorrow morning. So that's the itinerary. And the principal purpose of this trip was to get informed and updated on the situation in Afghanistan. And any review of the situation in Afghanistan has to include the situation in Pakistan, where we also spent some time, because we were there, reviewing all of the things that the United States is doing to try to assist in the catastrophic flood that Pakistan has experienced. And it was the worst flood they've ever had in their history. They literally got, in 1 day, more rain than they get annually in most years. But what I thought I'd do is talk primarily about the Afghanistan portion of this trip, but I'd be glad to ask any questions when we get to the end. My goal in coming to Afghanistan was to just make it clear to our soldiers. We have over 1,400 Vermonters who are serving right now in Afghanistan, that Vermonters respect and admire the service that they're providing to the country. And I had a chance to visit the soldiers and had dinner with about 15 soldiers at Bagram Air Force Base, where we have many soldiers deployed. And the first thing that I was quite proud of, and I think all Vermonters will be proud of, was it became very evident that the Vermont contingent of soldiers has a very high reputation among the highest levels of leadership in the military. Before I even got to Afghanistan, we had a morning meeting with Admiral Mullen, who is as you know, is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and his second in command, General Nicholson. And when I was with 5 members of Congress, those military leaders singled out the Vermonters and said that they are doing, A, a great job, B, they came with tremendous training, and they really admired their training, and then C, they all knew about the leadership reputation that Will Roy, who's commanding our Vermonters, had. So it made me quite proud, because I'm sitting there with 4 other members of Congress, and the only troop delegation that was mentioned were the Vermonters. And then that was repeated when I got to the to Bagram Air Force Base, and we had a meeting with General Campbell, who is in charge at Bagram, and he complimented the leadership of Will Roy and the Vermont troops. And in fact, Colonel Roy is, among other things, in charge of command and control for the defense of the Bagram Air Force, the Bagram Air Base. Pardon me. And Bagram had been attacked only a few weeks earlier, and that attack was very aggressively repulsed. But General Campbell pointed out that it was Will Roy who was in charge of command and control. So I think Vermonters have every right to be proud of the incredible work and reputation that our Vermont soldiers have with the highest levels of leadership in the military. Now, my dinner with the troops was great. They're all working hard. They have great morale. They're in good spirits, and they're working hard, and they miss their families. And but the night that we had dinner, the Vermonters, led by Will Roy, did really a homegrown recognition ceremony to acknowledge the above and beyond the call of duty work that was done by Wendy Fitzgerald, who's a nurse from Rutland. And what she did is volunteer with some other women to go clean up a hospital in Kabul that provided treatment to women. But the place really was quite dirty. It had vegetation growing in like the corridors, and it was so unclean that there were mice and rodents around, and obviously just terrible. And Wendy was one of the leaders in going through there on their own time and cleaning that clinic, that hospital, from top to bottom, so that it was sanitary and safe. And the Vermont soldiers at dinner presented her with a speech from Will Roy, gave her a coin that's, I think, a symbol of real importance in respect in the military when you are given like a battalion coin. And it was just nice to see the fellow soldiers honoring Wendy for her effort to go above and beyond the call of duty. And I also had a chance to talk to Howard Van Benthuizen, who joined us at dinner, and he's a judge. He's a Vermont State Court judge, and he's in the Guard and has been deployed. And he's been given an assignment that General Petraeus, not by General Petraeus, but regards as very important, and that's trying to help the Afghans develop a rule of law approach that'll make their society function better. And, of course, we couldn't have a better person than a judge who has experience as a prosecutor, has experience as a private attorney, and, of course, as a judicial officer. And he was explaining to me his work, and it's tough. He's working hard, and it's just it's an uphill climb, but he's doing it, and doing it with great skill and dedication. So the best part of my trip really was visiting with the Vermont soldiers. And a couple of things that the Vermonters brought up, several of them asked me about the GI Bill of Rights. And that's the legislation that Congress passed, and by the way, on a bipartisan basis, to provide educational opportunities to returning soldiers. And in fact, for some, it's transferable. So if they're older, as many of our Guard members are, they can transfer their access to higher education to a son or a daughter. And what I was hearing from the Vermonters is that they're starting to think and look forward to coming home, and they want to get an education or help their child, son or daughter, get an education. And one of the other Vermonters asked me about the small business loan program, and that's something that I've been promoting in Congress to try to make loans available to some of our returning veterans who have a business and want to keep it going, or start a business and it has some promise. So what was very, very clear to me is that employment, jobs, that's very much on the mind of our soldiers, including Vermonters. And one of my top priorities, and I hope top priorities of many of my colleagues, will be to do all we possibly can to help our returning veterans get back into the workforce. And obviously that's a big challenge in many cases because of the situation in our economy. So it was a tremendous opportunity and privilege for me to visit with Vermonters, to see their upbeat attitude. No one had any complaints. They've got strong unit cohesion, and I was able to convey to them the praise they were receiving literally from the commanding officer at Kabul and from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The second part of our visit was really focused on reviewing the military and political situation with the military leaders. And we met with General Petraeus. Of course, he's the new commander on the scene. It's very evident that he has the full confidence of the troops, from the high-level generals down to the privates that we met. And what General Petraeus told us is that they've got a big challenge. His view was that it was in many ways much more challenging than what he did in Iraq. He made a recommendation, and the President accepted it, to add additional resources. And the resources are now there in country, and that's in the form of additional troops, but it's also in the form of additional civilian help to try to implement General Petraeus' counterinsurgency strategy. And it obviously is his view that that's the approach that has the best prospect for success. There's no guarantees here, no matter what. But it's an ambitious program, and he is in the process of trying to implement it. And what it requires is two things. One, appropriate military actions with a significant emphasis on special forces operations, where with the use of intelligence, al-Qaeda leadership is identified, and then special forces are deployed to capture or kill identified Taliban leaders. But second, it requires getting the support of the population, and General Petraeus' strategy very much involves trying to develop confidence in governmental institutions from Kabul down to the local village. And there are thousands of tiny villages in Afghanistan where the loyalties of the people in those villages is up for grabs. And what the Petraeus approach involves is trying to build up Afghan capacity in the military and in civilian leadership. And he's training troops, and the troops clearly were well trained, because the things I heard General Petraeus tell us about his counterinsurgency strategy, I heard almost the same words coming out of the mouths of master sergeants and captains who were at the real grassroots level of implementing the general's policy. And so we had a chance to speak with him, with Ambassador Eikenberry, and with other top leadership when we were in Kabul. And the next day, we went down to Kandahar. And Kandahar and Helmand province, as you know, are in the south of Afghanistan, and that's really the heart of the Taliban activity right now. And Kandahar is where 9/11 was planned by Osama bin Laden. And we really had a chance then to go to the site of a village stabilization program. And Kandahar is a big airfield that we flew into in a C-130. But then we took helicopters out to two villages. The first was a village called Arghandab, Arghandab. And this was about 15 minutes by helicopter northwest of Kandahar city. And at that station, there were probably 60 to 80 special forces and there were also civilians from the Department of Agriculture, from USAID. And what they then did was give us a briefing on the efforts that they're making to try to stabilize the area with respect to security, and then build local capacity from governmental institutions to agricultural programs. Kandahar Valley that we were in is an agricultural area. The area that we were in, actually, pomegranates, nuts, dates are a better cash crop than poppies, which are more predominant to the west in Helmand province. And we got the full briefing from them, and the real impression I had from this briefing was just how resource-intensive this plan is, because it took these trained soldiers to be down there, and it took civilians with great skill and experience also to be down there, along with interpreters, so that when they were communicating with local Afghans, they'd be able to understand each other. And that was the center out of which several what they call special forces teams were deployed. And these special forces were not doing special operations. There's two categories of special forces. One, the special operations that are whose assignment is to kill and capture identified Taliban, and then the special forces whose function is to basically implement the village stabilization program of General Petraeus, where they are living in among Afghan people in villages, in some cases in the same mud huts that Afghani villagers live in themselves. And we flew out to one of these sites in a village called Kakrez, which was about 10 minutes by helicopter from the first place that we landed, and that's Khakrez. And this was a very small village of about 150 people in an agricultural area that, without irrigation, is dusty, dry, and desolate, but with irrigation can produce bumper crops. And the soldiers who live out here, there were like three teams of, they call them A teams, but special force teams that would then go from that location in Kakrez to various locations and villages that they could actually take personnel carriers to get there. And then they would stay out in these villages for up to a week and establish relationships, try to build confidence among the people, and also provide a security zone. But they took us from this base camp of theirs in Kakrez, pardon me, out into the little village right there, and we were able to talk to Afghanis who were eking out a very meager living. Obviously, these conversations involved translators and were limited in scope, but because of the language barrier, not because of our lack of access to the Afghanis. And the people I spoke to said the economy was worse right now because they were having a lot of trouble getting their goods to market. We were close to that ring road, Highway 1, and they all had some stories about explosions on that highway that obviously made them nervous and insecure about their ability to go about their business. And we met the local village elder, and we met the local village governor. They were quite friendly and willing to talk to us and not shy. It's hard for me to assess how well things are going. What was easy to assess is how committed our troops are to the effort, and how their morale was very good despite very, very harsh living conditions. I mean, these soldiers will live out there for a couple of months, and there's, in many cases, little or no electricity and little or no running water. So it's very harsh conditions and very dangerous area. Pardon me, because there is a lot of activity down there. So when I asked about, pardon my cough, I asked when I was with the soldiers, and when I was with General Petraeus and Ambassador Eikenberry, and basically whoever we were able to visit, one of the questions I asked was, what are the challenges that we face? And when it came to the challenges about the success of the counterinsurgency program, the recurring theme was the corruption that existed in the Afghan society was an enormous impediment to gaining the confidence of the citizens populace. And that ranged from the corruption in Kabul, we're seeing stories about President Karzai's brother, who 9 years ago ran a restaurant outside of Washington, D.C., and now is apparently worth about $100 million, where the Bank of Kabul has lost millions and millions of dollars because individuals with access to power and U.S. money invested it in Dubai real estate that blew up, and now they want a bailout. But it was from that all the way down to petty corruption by the Afghan police. When I was on that visit to Cockres, speaking to a lieutenant who was a Special Forces soldier, bright, committed, hardworking, he said that if there's an Afghan policeman who basically treats a local villager with impunity and shakes him down for a bribe, that really can undo a lot of the good work that he and his soldiers are doing. So corruption was a recurring theme from the lieutenant I spoke to in Cockres to General Petraeus. And obviously, we have to look, that's President Karzai's responsibility. And then the second issue that came up pretty regularly was the problem that there is a sanctuary in Pakistan for the Afghan Taliban. Called the biggest element of that is called the Haqqani Network, Haqqani network. And in fact, the Haqqani Network was responsible for the attack on the base in Kabul. And they're seen as persistent, strong, disciplined, and quite fierce fighters, about 4,000 strong. But as long as the Haqqani Network has refuge, safe sanctuary in Pakistan, and they're free to come and go to attack our troops, that's obviously a military challenge. And we need much more cooperation from Pakistan in order to be able to address that. So those were the two challenges that were identified to me as real serious and ongoing problems. The trip to Pakistan, we did meet with General Kiani when we were there. He is the head of the Army, former head of ISI, and it's really hard to know. He assures us that he's doing everything he can, but the Pakistani military has been doing that for years, but not really taking any specific action. They have been taking action against the Pakistani Taliban because they perceive that as a threat to the Pakistani state. But there continues to be serious questions about whether the Pakistani leadership actually is tolerant of the Afghan Taliban because of their own preference to have destabilized Afghanistan, and that's an ongoing debate within on the American side as to what the Pakistani intentions are or what their motivations are. But the bottom line is that if they tolerate allowing the Afghan Taliban to have a safe haven, that's a real threat to our troops. The one thing that we did while we were in Pakistan was have an opportunity to go and view some of the flood damage and also the flood response, which was actually a very upbeat experience. I mean, Pakistan just had, as you know, this devastating flood. It's the worst flood they've had in their history. And they received, it was a flood that occurred because they received more rain in a single day than they get all year. And there was just no way they were prepared to cope with it, and probably couldn't have been because it was so beyond anything that historically had afflicted them. But the U.S. military deployed resources quickly and effectively to start rescuing victims who were stranded and to begin delivering supplies. And they were working very closely, in this case, with the Pakistan military. And we had a chance to visit with a joint military command, Pakistan and U.S., in the flood response. So those are some of the highlights of my trip. And why don't I open it up now for questions?
John Briggs from the Free Press. Could you give me the hometown again of Wendy Fitzgerald and the spelling of the judge's name?
Wendy's from Rutland, and it's Wendy Fitzgerald. And Howard Van Benthuizen, he's from Franklin County, and I'm not positive which town is his hometown. By the way, they gave me telephone numbers of spouses, parents that I'm going to be able to call. But Howard, I don't know which town in Franklin County he's from, but it's probably in the phone book. And his spelling, let me give you that, is VAN, and then capital BENTHUYSEN, and he's as I mentioned, a Superior Court judge in Vermont.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, did you say Wendy with an I is in Illinois?
That's correct, I did.
Okay.
Yep. Wendy Fitz, Fitz, and then actually apostrophe Gerald, capital Gerald, and she's a sergeant.
You spoke about the pervasive corruption and so on. Is the message you're getting one of the futility of this, given that pervasive corruption, or does the assessment deal?
The corruption is a huge problem. You see, the General Petraeus is very, I think, savvy and candid. He says that this requires ultimately a political solution, so that anything that's going to be a political solution has to have the support of the Afghani people. And it's why his effort, whether it's on the military efforts or even the civilian capacity building efforts, it's all about trying to put the Afghanis first, so they develop the power, the capacity, and accept the responsibility. And then that leads to citizen confidence. But if citizens are getting shaken down with petty corruption constantly, then it really erodes the potential. And so, that's I just report what they said, and it's really the obvious, and that is that you've got to have a civil society where people aren't shaken down. It's interesting. We had dinner tonight with the president of Georgia, Mr. Saakashvili. And I don't know how much you all know about this, but when he came in, he went to Columbia. He went to Columbia in the United States. He's a Georgian. But one of the things that he did when he got elected, and there was a real reform movement here, but he inherited a totally corrupt police force. It was the legacy of the Soviet system. They had a very large police force that was paid virtually nothing. And the only way they made money was by collecting bribes. And what he did when he got elected, right after he was sworn in, is he literally fired the entire police force. And they downsized it, they increased the salary, and they brought people in who took the job of being a police officer as something that was honorable and important, and they basically went from a system in this country where when people were polled before his election, 98% said that they had had some experience with bribery with the police, to what the president told us tonight went down to 1% now. So it really makes a difference. And obviously it's going to have to be the political leadership, President Karzai, that's going to have to take the lead to try to take that type of action. My view would obviously be very good for the country.
Will Karzai take that kind of action?
It takes a political leadership. I mean, that's something that Karzai has to do. It can't, that
is he going to?
I haven't seen evidence of it.
Congressman, this is Fred Bever at WSCR Public Radio. You, on VPR last week, expressed your concerns about the idea of nation building. And VPR basically said that you thought it was the wrong approach. After seeing a Vermont judge and nurse doing what I think pretty arguably is nation building, has that affected your views of that strategy?
Well, I continue to be skeptical. I mean, the General Petraeus' approach of counterinsurgency is very explicitly about building the local capacity in institutions that are necessary to have a functioning society. So General Petraeus is doing what he said he set out to do. What I saw when I was there is how extraordinarily labor-intensive it is. I mean, you've got a Vermont judge who's trying to use his skill to help make a little bit of progress. You've got a Vermont nurse who's using her skill to try to help create a better medical system. You've got these special forces soldiers. They are the best of the best. These are soldiers who oftentimes they get selected to go into special forces because they've proven themselves to be among the best soldiers that we have. And the investment of their time and taxpayer money to make a special forces soldier is quite extraordinary, and they're a huge asset. And they're working in villages, and where they are working, I believe they're making a difference. But there are thousands and thousands of villages in Afghanistan. And the question I have is whether we have the resources to be able to deploy as many of these A-teams as would be required. That's where my skepticism comes in. It's a resource question.
Do you know now?
And then when you add to it corruption, where you have to have a willing partner, that's where my reservations come from.
Thank you. Do you know now where you would stand on a request for an additional 10,000 troops?
Well, I voted against it already. We haven't been requested for additional troops. The plan, I did vote against it was an additional 30,000 troops, and I'm on record. I voted against that. But that decision was made without my vote. And the plan now is that General Petraeus and Ambassador Eikenberry are going to give a report to the President in December. And, of course, as you know, the President has said that July will be a decision point after he reads all of the information and how this is going. So it really is one step at a time. And when I had my opportunity to vote, I voted no because of the skepticism that I do have.
Thank you.
This is John Briggs from the Free Press again. How confident are you that you were seeing a typical situation and not a kind of Potemkin village, which happens so often in Vietnam?
Yeah, there's no question that when you go to Afghanistan as a member of Congress, you're getting a very limited point of view. They give us very good security. They don't want something to happen to a congressman. So my point of view, or what I saw, is certainly nothing compared to what our soldiers see and live with day in and day out. So it is limited. But on the other hand, it's much more significant being able to be on the ground with the soldiers at one of these outposts, to speak directly to them and listen to them when they're at work in the battle space. So, yes, it's limited. I understand that. But it's certainly much more real and much more comprehensive than if I were just sitting in my office in Washington or Burlington, Vermont.
Congressman, this is Gordy Baldwin from WKVT in Brattleboro. I just wondered if you could say in general how you feel the Afghan population feels that they have number one, an effective government? Do they have any government? Number three, how would you rate their understanding of government, their central government?
Well, I can't speak with authority on the basis of my discussions with Afghani citizens because I don't speak the language, and what I would convey is more from what I say. I mean, we did meet some Afghani soldiers who were working with our special forces. They were at Kabul, and these are the special forces who do actual operations to kill and capture. And these soldiers had the respect of Admiral McRaven, who's in charge of special forces. And we went to the room where they do a lot of these video feeds and get intelligence from the drones. And the Afghan soldiers and officers are very much part of that. And Admiral McRaven has given them a seat at the table, and they go jointly on operations. And in talking to them, it's a soldier-to-soldier bond. But that's obviously limited. But and we spoke to some when we were coming out of General Petraeus's headquarters. We spoke with some Afghan parliamentarians who really were some appreciative of American presence, see the benefits of having a U.S. presence there. And no doubt there is, but what you know about Afghanistan, this is not anything I know from talking to Afghans, but really reading and talking to many of our officials there, there's not a strong history or tradition of a strong central government. It's very much a village-centered, rural-centered governing structure. So that obviously is another challenge. So I guess that's the best I can answer that.
Thank you.
Are you optimistic at all? Do you see any room for optimism about the overall mission, or do you think in 5 or 10 years we're going to be looking at a Afghanistan run by the Taliban again?
Well, here's the dilemma. Yeah, there is a real threat to America. I mean, the Al Qaeda operated out of Kandahar and planned 9/11, and it's very important for all of us to acknowledge that there is a serious threat. There are people who want to hurt Americans. The question is, what is a sustainable strategy? And America's wrestling with that, and our military leaders and our political leaders are wrestling with it. The policy right now is nation building in Afghanistan. But my skepticism about that is whether the resources are there, but more significantly, whether when you have a decentralized, dispersed threat, having a nation-building approach in one location is the best way to address it. And I've consistently had that question, and I still do. But there were some things in this visit that were different than when I was last there. Kabul seems safer. There's an incident here and there, and there was an effort during the Kabul conference by the Taliban to disrupt it.
When were you there last?
I was there in November of 2009.
Mm-hmm.
In some sections of the country are totally stable, like up in the Bamiyan area. That's in north and west of Kabul. And that's the area that was famous because those wonderful stone statues that had been there for centuries were destroyed by the Taliban. I'm told that you can walk around it with safety. So there are many parts of Afghanistan where it's safe and calm. but so there is some, according to General Petraeus, improvement in security. He felt it was safe in the Kabul area. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, when Senator Kerry was in Kabul, he and Ambassador Eikenberry got out in the middle of the city and walked around. Obviously, they had security with them, but they felt the security situation was was safe enough that he and Senator Kerry were able to walk around without armor on and just talk and interact with Afghans that they ran into on the street. So, there's some things that are positive, but the fundamental question on the nation-building strategy is really, I think, still to be determined.
Congressman Gordon Verchillo from the Rutland Herald. If the nation-building strategy isn't what we should be pursuing, what should we be doing?
Well, my preference has been essentially to have more of a focus on the special operations, where we use intelligence and we take military action where appropriate against an identified target. And that would be somebody who's been clearly identified as an enemy who's trying to do us harm, or where there's emergence of a training camp or a threat. But the reality of our security threat is that it's not restricted to Afghanistan. In fact, one of the biggest problems we have in Afghanistan is in Pakistan. It's the safe haven. And in fact, the last terrorist threat to the United States, the Times Square attempted bombing, that was perpetrated by an American citizen who went to Pakistan and received training in bomb making, then returned to New York City and attempted to detonate that bomb. And the work in apprehending him was done by the excellent efforts of the New York Police Department and the FBI. So we've got a threat here, but it's dispersed and decentralized. And my question on nation building has been, whether when you have a dispersed and decentralized threat, you have a nation-centered response, and then second, the sustainability of it. We're 9 years into Afghanistan, and the question is whether this is a policy that we can sustain forth. But the president's made his decision. The General Petraeus is there. He is, in my view, the best person we could have in charge of the military operation, and so they're in the implementation phase of this policy.
Do you find when you return from a trip like this that you have some influence with your colleagues? Do they want to get your impressions, or is it such a dog and pony show that they don't think it has much value?
Well, many colleagues can go. I'll tell you what it does for me. It does two things. One, it makes me really appreciate how much it is our country is asking soldiers that we send there. And I think it's important for every member of Congress to understand that, because this decision to ask a man or woman to leave their home, put themselves in harm's way, is profoundly serious. And when you go there, you cannot help but be impacted by two things. First is their dedication, come away humbled, filled with respect for their sacrifice and their competence. But secondly, how dangerous it is. And it's very sobering, because anyone who's involved in making the policy that we're asking these soldiers to implement has to be fully aware that the gravity of that decision. And I want, as Vermont's representative, to constantly, fully emotionally aware of what it is we're asking of our soldiers. And then secondly, I want to pay them respect for what they're doing. But it's as much an emotional experience as it's fact-finding. The emotional part is getting a full realization of how much it is we're asking of our troops, and how selfless they are, and how dedicated they are. As I say, anyone who's in the position to affect policy has to be very sure that the policy we're asking these soldiers to implement is worthy of their willingness to make a sacrifice.
We have a couple of people from the Free Press going to Afghanistan next week. What's the weather like at Bagram?
Bagram it was probably in the 80s. Kandahar was over 100. So, it's close to 100 maybe. Kandahar that's the south, and it was very hot and very dusty. The elevation's about 3,000 feet. Bagram is 6,000 to 7,000 feet, and the climate is in the 80s. But that's great. They're going. I mean, it really is. And this is going to be an opportunity for Vermonters to get firsthand reporting about the day in and day out life challenges that our soldiers face. So I just think it's terrific that Vermonters are going to get that firsthand reporting.
Well, I'll pass that on to them.
I do. It's just I think it's terrific. I mean, they'll hear, as I heard, that Vermonters are singled out for the quality of the people that we have there, the training, the leadership. I remember talking to General Doobie. When the word came down over a year ago that Vermonters were going to be deployed, and General Doobie said it's training. As they get in a situation, their response has to be instinctive, and it's hard to train because it's in the abstract. It's hard to imagine yourself actually in a firefight, and the only way troops are going to have the best chance of succeeding and surviving is with the day in and day out training that they did back in Vermont, and that was the constant refrain that General Doobie said to me and others: "Got to train." And what I was impressed at is our soldiers were willing to do that hard work, and then that was noted. I mean, you can't imagine. I'm sitting there at this meeting, this morning meeting with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and General Nicholson, his aide, and they bring up the excellent training of the Vermont troops and their excellent leadership. And they did it, as I said, in front of members of Congress from 4 other districts. And they're pretty, politic people, so they don't want to say a good thing to one person and not shower praise on everybody else. But they, the quality of our troops and their leadership and the good work that General Doobie did just stood out that they had to mention it.
All right. Well, unless anyone else has further questions, I think we should wrap this up.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm sure we all do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Well, I do. Thank you all for your willingness to participate in this. I really appreciate it.
What time is it in Tbilisi right now? Are you about to catch a plane?
No, we're going in the morning. We're going to be here tonight. It's 10:38. I think we're 8 hours different than Vermont.
Okay.
And it's 10:38 according to my clock here.
Well, very good talking to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Feel free to send off to follow-up questions. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you